This is the Wheat Belly Guide to Grain-Free Baking. Now, without grains, like wheat flour or cornstarch or corn flour or rice flour, you can recreate delicious, wonderful dishes like cheesecake, birthday cakes, cookies, chocolate chip cookies, key lime cupcakes, bagels, muffins, scones, just about anything using non-grain substitutes. And when you do so, it facilitates weight loss. Unlike grains that cause weight gain, these flours and meals don't cause a rise in blood sugar like grains do. They don't add inflammation. They don't feed dysbiosis, disrupted bowel flora. They don't cause things like joint pains and skin rashes like rosacea and seborrhea like grains do. So this is a carefree way of cooking and baking. But we choose our flours and meals very carefully. You find those lists in the Wheat Belly books and the Wheat Belly blog. But the most common ones are almond flour, coconut flour, ground golden flaxseed, sesame seed flour is an excellent flour, and several others. But we choose them carefully for those reasons. We want benign, healthy flours and meals to do our baking. So one of the things we give up, though, when we don't use wheat and grains, is we lose some of the rise, the effect that gives bread, for instance, its ability to puff up and become light and airy, as well as the stretchiness that's provided by the gluten in grains. So we lose all that. But we can kind of recreate some of those effects, so at least it provides us with some familiar substitutes, particularly people like family and friends who might not know that you're not cooking without wheat and other grains. So one very useful strategy to recreate some of the effects of grains is to combine or mix your flours and meals. A very common combination, for instance, would be 3½ cups of almond flour with 1/4 cup coconut flour, 1/4 cup of ground golden flaxseed. That very simple mixture yields a little bit better texture and cohesiveness and lift in your final product. That's why I have a Wheat Belly all-purpose baking mix, and the company Wheat Free Market that I advise also has an all-purpose baking mix on a similar type of mixture. Another strategy used to get better structure and rise out of your food, out of your baked products, is to use more eggs. If a recipe would have called for 2 eggs, consider using 3 or even 4 or 6 eggs, and you get better rise, better structure, better texture. So, and don't be scared of eggs, right? Eggs are full of cholesterol and fat that we don't care about. We want more fat, so don't worry about that ridiculous advice to limit your eggs, saturated fat, and dietary cholesterol, etc., because we do not pay any attention to that ridiculous nonsense. So use more eggs for better baked product and results. Learn how to use what are called acid-base reactions. And it sounds like chemistry, but it's really just using some very common ingredients. This is all discussed in the Wheat Belly blog post that accompanies this video. One common strategy, for instance, is to use 1 teaspoon of baking soda, which is sodium bicarbonate, with 2 teaspoons of vinegar. And that will generate CO2, carbon dioxide, bubbles in your product. That's a very common combination. Another one would be 1 teaspoon of baking soda for 1/4 teaspoon of citric acid, acid from citrus fruit. And those are easy ways to generate carbon dioxide that is typically caused by the reaction of yeast and amylopectins in grains. But without grains, you can recreate that by using these acid-base reactions. One of the most helpful strategies to generate rise and texture in your foods is to whip your egg whites. Whip them till they're stiff. So if you're going to use 4 eggs, for instance, in a recipe, separate the eggs from the yolks, whip the egg whites, use the yolks with the other liquids, let's say with water or coconut milk, whatever liquid you're using, and then after you do the acid-base reaction, then add the egg whites. And I stress that because if you add the egg whites before you do the acid-base reaction, you can get something called baker's ammonia, which smells like ammonia, which is very unpleasant. You can't eat the final product. That occurs in any kind of baking, by the way. So if you're going to use an acid-base reaction like baking soda and citric acid or baking soda and vinegar, do that first, and then add your whipped egg whites so you don't get baker's ammonia. Microwaving your dough, your batter, can help. Now, I know some people object to the use of microwaves, but I have yet to see any real data showing that microwaving food is deleterious. There's lots of rumors and internet chatter, some of it from Russia, of all odd places, but I've actually never seen any real science. So until somebody produces science that shows us that microwaving is deleterious, I use it. And so what you do is you have to put your batter or your dough into a microwave safe dish or pan and microwave it. And this would be a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes. You don't want to cook it, you just want to generate gas. And that can give you about a third more volume in your final product. So that can also help. Lastly, yeast. You know, in the Wheat Belly books, I left yeast out. Some people have an adverse reaction to yeast. It's only a few percent, but they have an allergy reaction to yeast that can mimic some of the effects of grains. And so I didn't want to cloud the issue by continuing to include yeast. But if you've been grain-free and you've had great results and your stomach is better and your irritable bowel syndrome, etc., is gone, you can experiment to see if you can tolerate yeast. Most people can. More than 9 out of 10 people can. And you reintroduce that yeasty flavor and smell, which a lot of people like, and it also gives you better rise. You'll follow the directions on the yeast that you purchase. It does help to proof it, expose it to water and a little bit of sugar. You add sugar because the yeast likes sugar. So even though you add sugar to your yeast mixture, it consumes the sugar, and the sugar should not be present in any substantial amount in your final product because it's eaten and gone. So that's another way of generating better rise. You can mix and match these strategies. I like to do such things as using more eggs, using one acid-base reaction, then adding whipped egg whites, and sometimes using yeast to generate more rise. And you'll find, by the way, how to use yeast in my Wheat Belly blog post on that topic. But you can combine these strategies depending on what kind of food you're making. So some recipes don't require much lift. Some recipes do, like you're trying to make a sandwich bread, you want to get as maximum lift as possible. So use judgment how much you want to do. Now, a lot of the Wheat Belly recipes already incorporate some of these strategies, so you don't have to think about it. And that's the easy way out, of course. But you can enjoy, bottom line, you can enjoy wonderful products that have good structure, flavor, and texture with no grains, none of the deleterious downsides of grain consumption. Just enjoy your scone, cupcake, or cookie without grains.